Good morning, you guys. It is Tuesday at 8:30. I believe it's the 3rd of October. Here we are, my friends, coffee and coaching. 30 minutes dedicated to trying to transmute thoughts that could be negative into positive. 30 minutes of trying to add some goodness to life. That's whatever. That's what it is. That's the honest truth about it. So, I had this whole thing planned this morning talking about an experience that I had over the weekend and how I had a total breakdown, and I had blogged about something called the meantime, which is kind of the in-between time of things. And the in-between time just meaning like typically we're living our life from one thing outside of us to the next, like when I graduate or when I get this job or when we go on vacation or those people come into town or, whatever those things are that we kind of live our lives for, one moment to the next. And I was going to talk about that today. And then my dear social media person, Casey, who's the only person here watching right now, yay, mentioned that there's been a lot of stuff going on in the world. And that feels really important to me. So I'm actually, honestly, really scared to address this with you guys. And that's how I know that it's something that's really important. And so I'm going to. So as we all know, there's just an onslaught of crap going on in the world. Like there's just, every time you open your news, every time you look anything up, there's just more awfulness to be read about, listened to, shared, through the different channels of life, and we're surrounded by all of them. And so, of course, the most recent one with the shooting in Las Vegas comes to mind. Of course, our presidency, which I haven't even addressed, and namely because I'm hesitant to do so, primarily because I think that I have a bit of a different take on all of this, and it's my responsibility to share how I feel. That's what I built this off of, and that's what I'll continue to build this off of, is just simply my authentic self and how I truly feel. Good morning, Janie. Great to have you. And how I truly feel about these things, because I can't pretend to be anything that I'm not. And so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about just that, the climate of the upset that we're in right now, and how do we handle it. I'm going to share my viewpoint on it. And hopefully that will help to support you in creating maybe a more empowering way of looking at things for yourself. Because the last thing that we need to be is victims of what's going on in the entire world, because there's so much going on. And unfortunately, the channels always tend to highlight the negative stuff. It always talks about the fear-based stuff, the things that are awful that are happening, and it really only highlights that. And there's so much goodness going on in the world, but it's not communicated across channels in the same way, and it's just part of the way that the structure has been set up. So all of that to say that I've been hesitant to share my viewpoints on this, because my viewpoint is one of compassion. And it was funny because I was talking to my coach the other day, and we were talking about Donald Trump, and the presidency and how he's handling things in office. And I caught myself saying, like, Kat, my coach, I can't be angry, or I choose not to be angry, because I can actually empathize with how he feels, or like with how he's acting or being. And she asked me, to expand on that. And what I had to share with her was, like, when I was drinking, when I was leading a totally inauthentic life, and I was so scared of who I was, and I was so scared of being my true self, I had to lie my way through life. And I lied about everything. I lied about where I was at times. I lied about what I was, doing. I lied about, everything, going to class. I lied about how I got the grades I got. I cheated a lot. But that's what happens when you're an addict. You have to build your life on lies, because if you tell the truth and you are open and honest about what's going on, you'll have to give up your addiction. You'll have to give up that thing. And that's the only thing that's protecting you, your most vulnerable insides, from the outside world. That's the only reason anybody's addicted to anything, in my opinion. It's that there's so much lack of a connection or love for self that they have to put up this front in order to handle it, because there's so much awfulness going on inside that it has to be numbed, it has to be controlled, it has to be tuned down, and most people don't have the skills to be able to do that in a healthy way. So we take up drinking, we take up drugs, we take up an addiction of, social media or the TV or, whatever else it is that's going to, or eating, right? Anything that will numb that interior environment of chaos that's always going on, which are the negative thinking, the criticism of self, like all those awful things that are going on all the time in your head when you're an addict, because there's a lack of self-love and connection. So we use these substances, and then because we can't give those up, because we're too terrified to give those up, because then we would have to be present to that awful inner experience, we have to lie to be able to make our way through life. I mean, I used to drink at work. I used to drink first thing in the morning. I would have alcohol in a different beverage container so people wouldn't know, so that I could continually be drunk because I didn't know how to function sober. So all that to say, I can understand why Trump is the way that he is, because look at how far removed from love that man has to be in order to be lying all the time about everything. And so he's, constantly scrambling his way through life, trying to make up the next lie, make up the next lie, make up the next lie. And in doing so, he's losing face, and he's constantly offending somebody always. And so the thing about it is, all he's trying to do is get love. That's all he's trying to do, but he has some super messed up channels in his mind on how to be able to do that. How do we get love in America? The American dream is have the things, look beautiful, have, the life that other people desire, keep up with the Joneses, totally annihilate the Joneses, be way beyond them. That's how we get love in societal means. And so when I see Trump lying all the time like this and causing upheaval and pushing people away and being prejudiced and all the rest of it, it hurts my heart. Don't get me wrong. I hate it. And I don't like to see that exists in our world. But really underneath all of that, that's his shell. That's his external facade that he's trying to keep up so that he can protect himself, because he's so terrified and vulnerable on the inside. And if anybody actually saw who he really, he doesn't even know who he really is. I mean, I have to believe that at this point, he must be so separate from being vulnerable and authentic and transparent. That man cannot be transparent. He doesn't know how. So if you think about, in your own life, perhaps, I don't know if any of you guys can relate to this on any level, but if you think about there's what was that show, House of Cards? It's all I can think of is combining that imagery, House of Cards with a house of lies, and how quickly one little thing, if it gets pulled out, right, the whole thing comes crumbling down. Your whole thing is just shot. And now what do you have, to go off of? And now he's in the public, he's in the limelight. He has much more at risk to be when he falls from that kingdom. And so I can actually really relate to that experience of having to lie my way through parts of life to be able to survive. It's not meant to be malicious. It's not meant to be, at least for me in my experience, it was not meant to be malicious. It was not meant to hurt others. It was simply just to protect myself, because I was too scared of living my life and being who I am. So there's that piece of the puzzle. We can see that, the way he's operating in this world is not in a way where he is grounded and authentic. And that means that he's coming from, fear constantly. The other piece of what's going on is that, again, in my opinion, right, is that people are not born evil. It is my opinion that people are not born evil. Hello, Warren. Good morning. And so, if you think about a perfect little baby, if any of you have ever held a baby, right, you get this little being, and they're a little being of love. And when you see that little being, their only needs are primary needs. It's food, water, love. That is it, right? And so this perfect little being just gets molded and shaped by what's happening around them, nurture and nature, right? Maybe a little bit of like ancestral genetics, if you believe in that, which I do. Doesn't matter, whatever, right? But like, you get the point. No babies are born like inherently evil. And so, when these things happen in life that form, somebody to grow up to be the way that they are, it's my opinion that along the way, they've learned lessons about how to get love, because that's all we're trying to do from the moment that we're born, that are not positive channels, that are not, that don't create positive impact in this life. And Tony Robbins does a great thing on 6 human needs and how we get those needs met in either significant or in either positive ways or negative ways. So, for example, somebody who's trying to be significant, and who needs significance in this world, it could be somebody who, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they have a ton of significance for a lot of really positive things that they're doing in the world. And so they've been able to channel, and maybe we all have the need for significance. Everybody does, according to Tony Robbins in this psychology. And he does a great TED Talk on it if you're interested. But we're always trying to get those needs met, and it will either be in a positive way or in a negative way. I, last weekend, was in this place of the meantime, which I called it, which is like a stretch of time where I wasn't having to react to anything. And so it was just kind of like fine. Like, it was just okay. It was a stretch of space and time where I felt okay. And inevitably, when that goes on for too long, we start to stir the pot. And so we can stir the pot in a positive way, or we can stir the pot in the negative way. We can stir the pot by watching TV a little bit. Like, that might gain us a little bit of variety. We can start to eat something. That might give a little variety. I chose to pick a fight with my husband. That definitely gets you some variety. More positive ways of getting variety might be going to the gym or trying a new class or learning how to cook a new meal or take your dog for a walk, something like that. And so we're always trying to get our needs met in either positive or negative ways. And with a fuller understanding of these 6 human needs and psychology that Tony Robbins, I don't know if he founded it. It came before him. He uses it as a tool in his coaching. But the reason I share it is just simply to say that people who are acting out and doing awful things are looking to fulfill those needs in negative ways. It's like a person who is exposed to, lives in LA, very far from my childhood, right? And then they need significance, so they join a gang. Now all of a sudden they have connection. Now all of a sudden they have like a ladder to climb. They can gain significance. They might have weapons. That feels massively significant, right? And all they're trying to do is feel those things that maybe somebody in a different situation is better able to feel, or better able to fulfill those needs in a positive way, like joining, volunteer groups or a church or something else in that fashion or nature. And so all I'm saying is that when I see these kinds of things happening on TV, when we have the president that we have, when we have shootings going on, and I'm, like I said earlier, like, I'm very nervous to talk about this because I think my take on it could be different than a lot of people's out there. Just simply that I look at those people and I see them through a lens of compassion, only because I know that no baby is born evil. So if we're not born evil, if we're all born a blank slate of love, then how do we get to this place? How do we get, to a place of having to go, shoot people in Vegas or become this narcissist president who is just all about himself and me, and making choices that are affecting everybody else in really harmful ways, amazingly consistently. I mean, it's heartbreaking how, frequently he is just being himself and just like a bull in a china shop. And unfortunately, like, the implications of being that person in presidency are massive. So here's where we come in as people who are not a part of that. And if you're watching this and you're still watching it, I know that on some level, some of this may resonate with you, because the thing about it is that, Martin Luther King, right? What did he say? He said, you can't defeat evil with evil. Only love can do that, or something like that. You can't defeat hate with hate. Only love can do that. And that's the problem where we get stuck as citizens in the United States, as people who are subject to what's going on in the news, because The news is designed to cause fear. The news is designed to not just to give impartial information across the boards, broad spectrum. I mean, there's so much good happening in the world too. And so there's always this trickle of scare tactics that are coming in through so many channels now as well. You can't escape it, right? Even if you don't watch the news, like I don't have cable, I don't watch the news, and I personally, and I want to share what I do. Yes, love conquers all. I see good in chump. I love you guys. Yes, and so that's the whole thing about it. Like, we're constantly being inundated if we allow it. We have to be the gatekeepers of our own minds, and that is our responsibility. We are responsible for what we let in. So anytime you're being affected by anything in a negative way, you get to ask yourself the question, how can I take responsibility for this? And so we have to set up structures of support that allow us to show up in the world in a way that will actually contribute and add love and not perpetuate the fear and the negative energy that is constantly available. And if you have ever been in a room where things have been, fine and peaceful or whatever, and then somebody comes in and they're super negative, you know how fast that impacts the rest of the people in the room, right? I mean, immediately you can almost feel the shift in energy. And I know this because just on Sunday, I was at my parents' house, and my husband was over, my parents were there, and I had picked a fight. I was in a foul mood, and nobody even dared to look at each other. And that was just me in my parents' house with my husband, right? And so it's just negative energy spreads like that. I mean, it's like you get one person at work, you get one person in line at a grocery store, you get one person, even in traffic, right? Like somebody flips you off because they're listening to something they're pissed off about. Now all of a sudden you're in a grumpy mood. Now all of a sudden you can transmit that negative energy, and that transmits so quickly that all of a sudden you've created a landslide of negativity for all those people who you may really love and care about, but because you're not conscious about being the gatekeeper of your mind or really staying committed to good, now you're actually working for the forces of fear and negativity and evil unconsciously. And that's the problem. Because if we, as people who believe in good and who can feel compassion for these people and who can see good and who can open our hearts to that, we have to keep our hearts open. We have to keep our minds fixed on love. We have to shine light, which is love, where there is darkness. We don't try to fix the darkness. You don't try to shame the darkness. You don't try to shout the darkness away. None of that works. You just have to shine a light where there's darkness. You have to be love. And as you shine and you show compassion and you don't react or, in a negative way, and you choose responses that are actually full of love and compassion, now we can spread a word of love and compassion and create connection and create the opportunity to bring people in who are also fearing or full of fear or uncomfortable with what is. And so it's our responsibility to be able to set ourselves up for success in that way. So what I mean by that is that I personally, I don't watch the news because I don't want to hear that incessant stream of negativity. My husband checks the news every morning. He gives me what I need to hear. He keeps me apprised of what's going on because I don't want to be totally separate from it. I need to, I honor the responsibility of knowing what's going on to an extent, but I don't need to be inundated by it. I don't want to be overcome or at the effect by that energy. And I know myself because I'm very empathetic. If I sink into it too much, all of a sudden I get totally, I feel like I just take it all on, and all of a sudden I'm worth nothing for the rest of the day because I'm pissed off and I'm angry and I'm sitting there and I'm swearing at the breakfast table with my husband, and I'm, how can, he do this? How can she, how does this fucked up shit happen? Right? I'm just, so at the effect of it that all that negative energy is in our house now, and I can't stand that I could ever be a source of that. And so let's pretend I had a job, right, where I went to work and worked with other people. I might bring that with me. And misery loves company, right? Misery absolutely loves company. And so when you connect, what's something we can commiserate over? We can all talk about how, everything is so messed up in the world, because we can all agree on that, right? Like, it's incredibly easy to get validated when there's so much crap going on in the world. We can all join in on that party of like, yeah, let's commiserate together about all the crap that's going on. Well, that doesn't actually do any good, right? We have to change the message. We have to change the viewpoint. We have to change the perspective in order to create something different. And so oh, yay, Janie, that makes me really happy. Thank you for sharing that. So we have to be responsible about what we let in. We have to be responsible and aware of what we are emoting. What energy are we putting out into the world? We have to take absolute responsibility for that, because as we move through our day, we will either be a positive impact or a negative impact on every single person that we meet. And that goes beyond the words that are being said or the actual exchange of information. It's more about the energy that we're giving off. And so if you are open and full of love and compassion because you haven't inundated yourself with fear and negativity and upset, you're going to leave a very different imprint energetically everywhere you go throughout your day. Now, the other piece of the puzzle that I think is amazing that I never thought about, which I actually am borrowing from Kyle Cease, a transformational comedian who I went to his talk a couple weeks back. But he brought up a really great point about like, okay, well, if there's said to be this whole revolution of goodness and love that's starting to like take over, and we're making the return back to love supposedly, then why is there so much negativity in the world? And he brought up a really great point that I want to share with you guys, which is just simply that it is easier to stay committed to being negative than it is to be committed to staying positive or to seeking good. So for me, when I think about that in my own life, I can share a lot of stuff with you guys really easily and with no fear at all about like my own stuff that's going on, because that's my own stuff and nobody can argue with that. And it's my experience, and all I can do is share that and hopefully make a positive impact. Now, when it's on a greater scale, there's more opinions to be heard. There's more thoughts, and there's just more room for debate, right? And so when you enter into that realm, it's a little more intimidating. It's a little scary. Like, I don't want to offend people. I don't want to, like I'm trying to protect others from my point of view. But wait a second. Protecting others from my point of view. My point of view is love. My point of view is compassion. Why am I not 100% committed to my point of view, which is love and compassion, which is what the world so badly needs right now? Why am I afraid to speak about love and compassion? When you think about all the people out there who have no problem at all spewing hate, right? You have no people at all checking themselves for, should I make this post? Should I not make this post? Should I spread this, word of awful news, and then all of a sudden we're retweeting the awful tweets. We're sharing, I don't even know how to do that, but we're sharing the videos that are spreading negativity. We're talking about, oh my God, did you hear? And oh my God, I knew this person. And oh my God, did you and how awful is this? And how awful is that? And there's no check on any of it because it's so acceptable to spread negativity. It is so acceptable, predictable even, to talk about all the shit that's going on. And just, in our own lives on a global scale, it's just we are so much more committed to being negative than we are committed to being positive and for taking a stand for good. And I think it's because I think we're not, at least based on my own experience, right? Because I can share that with you guys. It's scary to take a different perspective. It's scary to take a stand when the whole current of the energy of the world is headed one direction, and you're like, oh wait guys, no, let's go this way. And like, you might be going alone, and now all of a sudden everybody else is headed downstream. You're trying to go upstream. You're alone. You're like putting yourself out there to be criticized, to be vulnerable, to hear people say, no, you don't know any better. You're naive. A little Pollyanna. I've been accused of that before, if you can believe it. But anyways, so it's our job. And like I said, if any of you are still here with me, right, and if you're hearing this message, then you know that you are a part of this. It's our job to stay committed to good. It's our job to open our hearts and watch them when they close, feel them close, and then reopen them, particularly to the people that are preaching hate. particularly to those people, because it's just like the bullies in my son's school. Like when he first got bullied, I was pissed. I was like, who is this kid, right? Like his mom and I were going to go like find this kid and just, whatever. Not like we ever would, obviously. But that's the reaction. It's like a bullying an innocent child. Oh my gosh. It like hurts your heart. You want to go like take control of matters and, whatever. But that kid is upset about something at home, and my husband is a middle school counselor, and he tells my son about some things that go on at school, and how, this kid was really not doing well in school, and he's kind of bullying other kids. And Nolan, my son, was like, why is he doing that? He's trying to understand. And my husband was saying, well, he doesn't have a mom, and his dad is working all the time. He has a grandma that tries to help, but he doesn't really have anybody at home. He doesn't really have anybody making him breakfast in the morning or dinner at night, tucking him in. And my son, oh my gosh, it was the sweetest thing in the entire world. He was so sad for that little boy. He was so sad that he didn't have those things. I mean, Nolan has 4 sets of grandparents, 2 sets of parents. I mean, he has so much love in the world, right? And he wanted to give this little boy an apple. He wanted to send him an apple with my husband to work because he felt bad for him that nobody was making him breakfast. And so we need to send these people who are full of hatred, metaphorically apples, right? Like we need to extend that compassion and extend that love and see that these people who are acting this way are simply acting out because they don't have the support systems at home. They didn't get the connection that they needed when they were young. They didn't get the love that was necessary to form wholly, complete people who are able to feel good enough about themselves to be able to overflow with that and connect with others. And so it's just a walk of life that they were given. And yes, there are choices along the way, absolutely. And because we are fortunate enough to be here talking about the subject in this manner, it is our responsibility to stay 100% committed to love. It is our responsibility to see that hatred and respond with love. It's our responsibility to notice when we get fired up or to feel angry or frustrated or whatever. Notice it for what it is, reopen our hearts, tear it all open again and say, no, I will love. I will give this apple. I will continue to give apples. I'm going to give somebody an apple today. I don't know. Like it just feels right. So you guys, that is my spiel for today. It was unexpected and I really appreciate those who stuck with me throughout it. My hope and my, prayer with all of this is just simply to inspire some love in your hearts so that as you move through your days today, you can be an extension of this conversation. You can consciously go into your day energetically open, energetically vulnerable. If you come across some negativity, big or small, right? It's like the little gossip by the water cooler. That counts towards negativity. It doesn't feel good if you're in a good mood and then you go hear people gossiping about whatever nonsense, is going on, and then you walk away and all of a sudden you don't feel as good. It's because that negativity, even the small stuff, is incredibly infectious. And now you're not set up for when you go back and hear that big stuff for success because you've already been taken away. You've already been exposed to that negativity, and then you take that away with you, and now you're not set up to cope with the things that actually matter. So I'm kind of rambling at this point, you guys. I apologize. But all that to say, like I said, my prayer is that you take away some love from this message. Continue to be 100% committed towards that. Respond with compassion instead of reacting with fear. And make the world a better place with everything that you've got and everything that you're given today on this day. Maybe even tomorrow too. All right, you guys. Eat an apple for me. I love you guys. Bye-bye.